What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Construction Technology Podcast with me, Mike, and Andrew. What's up, gentlemen? How's your Friday going?
Good man. How's yours?
Very good. I was just telling Andrew, Mike, before you joined. I did an all-day session with a general contractor partner of ours. They're using a few different products, but he messaged me earlier in the week and said, "Have you heard of Claude? It's amazing." And I'm like, "Yes, I'd love to see how you use it." And I went into his office, and he was without hesitation or worry, just one-shotting work breakdown structures, schedules, estimates. He's playing for the most expensive Claude, and he's going to max out his tokens. But like he's
That
blown
API
away.
key, you can let it ride.
and, and I thought they patched that.
No, they reopened it back up, I believe, for the now you can use the SDK agent for Claude. We're using Claude internally through OpenClaw. I know that's the most complicated, convoluted way of saying that, but
Yeah, a little bit.
yeah.
But I was just shocked. Honestly, I was shocked because a lot of what I've heard in the market is we need to trust the software. We need to make sure it's at like let's slow down before we just plug in AI. And maybe he's just like a cowboy, and it's a bit of a unique case. But what have you guys seen?
I mean, construction's not an industry that lacks for cowboys, but I mean, it might depend on the market, it might depend on the task. We're not seeing that. We had our cab on our customer advisory board on Tuesday, actually, and
Mm.
imagine AI was a topic. And there's a lot of like, yeah, it seems like there should be a lot of capability here. It's moving really quickly. We don't know quite where the right bets are for us. But the surprising thing I thought you guys would like, that was surprising to me, because they were saying the biggest impact they felt was actually in owners using Claude. Whereas one executive put it, like 6 months ago, they didn't know anything about construction, and now they're cost geniuses, where they're coming in, having run every proposal and every detailed estimate line through Claude, and are showing up with a ton of questions about every freaking detail, like in this thing. And that's interesting. Like, it's really cool to bring more to the table and have a lot more events. And it's not that, not that anyone would ever try to hide a number somewhere, right? But that may be getting much harder. That was what I saw today, or this week.
Interesting. Uh, One thing that hit home with me this week was Bricks and Bytes had a lawyer on their podcast talking about a construction lawyer talking about AI usage, and the example that he gave, which I thought was fascinating, was um, he was working on a litigation. He was working on litigation for a construction dispute. He got an email from the other firm's lawyer with notes of just agreement and disagreements on litigation. And the notes were favoring his client, not the other client. So they asked Claude questions, and the pushback that Claude created was actually hurting their case. Um, and I think that just happens at hyperscale. I know there was like a LinkedIn article this week by what is that guy's name? By AECAI, who's been posting like some benchmarking pieces, and just like he's talking about like the 10,000 employees at Turner that now have open access to open AI and launching 100 agents, and there's no structure, there's no infrastructure around that, there's no like what's actually happening, and like it's a double-edged sword using Claude any of these AI agents. I think we're
Oh,
only
this
seeing
is
the mistakes.
AEC Foundry, Guido.
Yeah, Guido. Yeah,
Yeah, very smart voice in
yeah.
construction tech. I like that. I like his content.
And then we're seeing that extreme internally, where it's like like now we can launch internally, our engineers can launch 1,000 software updates on a daily basis, and now like the product manager is not like the choke point, but now that person is having to review and approve all of these changes. I see a lot of that happening in construction. If you have a agent running through a schedule, or the owner sends out 7,000 changes to the schedule, who's approving that? And like you're shifting the onus to the actual approver, as opposed to relying on software, which I think is fascinating on these like differentiators between like what's deterministic and what's actually just like AI generated, and where's the line?
Well, tell me how you guys would think about this if you were in a leader's position. Okay, small GCs, they're using Claude, they're using OpenAI, and they're using it really without reservation, chucking things in, generating content. The bigger contractors are taking a conservative approach. I was speaking to a PM of a very large GC, and he prefaced our conversation by saying, "Don't tell the team I've been using OpenAI. I know we're not supposed to."
Support group, OpenAI users anonymous.
Well, what do you do? What do you do? If you're a small GC, you actually have an advantage. Maybe you're not encumbered by potential bureaucracy and a mechanism that's trying to protect you and your team's information. But the smaller ones, they're moving forward. They're one-shotting work breakdown structures. Where that gets them, I don't know. Right? If it's not mission critical, and if it's a submittal to the owner and it just needs to satisfy that they thought through it, maybe that's okay. But if they're going to hang their hat on it and build like a scope of work subcontract, maybe they should take a little bit more time. But anyway, you're a large GC. Maybe you're head of innovation. What approach are you taking? How do you actually allow people to innovate, tinker, experiment, given that you've put in this whole structure that really means you have to be involved?
What do you think, Luigi? Let's ask you first. How are you seeing it happen?
It's tough. I think if I'm head of innovation or if I'm leading a team, I first need to be okay with uploading my information, right? And so I don't know if I'm going to go pay OpenAI or ChatGPT, $30 million a year, but I think I need to say, okay, some projects are okay and some projects are not. Let's just do a test bed scenario where these projects that are public projects, let's say non-confidential, I'm just going to allow these teams to do whatever they want. Chuck it in Claude, chuck it in OpenAI. But I need to measure something. I need to know if it's actually better at the end of the day. So maybe satisfaction surveys, maybe I'm measuring, internal spend relative to earned value. But I think you have to pilot it. Like, you can't just let everyone go across the organization and let's just use the most advanced models. But I probably would earmark a handful of projects and say, okay, these ones you're going to use Claude and you're going to get the most expensive version, and you have to attend this one seminar, and then we'll see how it goes. And if it goes well, go from there.
So maybe we dig into even Andrew's.
So slow is cost, not risk, is what it sounds like. That it's like, hey, if I do $200 a month times 10,000 employees for the highest level of Claude or whatever, like pretty soon you're going to is that?
Yeah, it's a concern and it's expensive, but it's always relative to what you're getting. So that's why they have to measure something. But they just what's the North Star KPI for them, right? Probably like FTEs per dollar of earned value or something like that. I don't know.
So just based on Andrew's comment earlier, play that example out. All right, an owner launches over a list of 7, whatever the number is, 150 changes to a general contractor that they historically did not have to have. I would guess their hope, again, some sort of hope would be like, hey, could joint help manage this? Or some sort of tool help manage this? Because now all of a sudden that PM estimator is sitting there like, I had 0 tasks to do to orchestrate and approve. Now I have 150. And is that person trained to make that decision?
Like some of it's tasks, some of it's just questions. It's like someone shares you a cost proposal, say, and you dig into the numbers and you know enough to ask certain questions. Like, hey, should we be creating contingency on this? But now, you're able to take the AI and look at every detailed number in the work breakdown structure and say, what's behind this number, and question it and say, rightly or wrongly, this doesn't seem to match the market. Is there more money we can get out of this? You're able to attack all the details all at once, and you have to justify at a new level of confidence, not just the overall number, but each of the pieces of the details. Each can justify the whole number by saying, look at all this detail we have. And now, not entirely, but there is an element of that, I think, in estimating. And now it's each of those pieces of detail, now there's enough attention that can be brought to bear with these AI tools that each of those becomes a liability, because each of those might be wrong, and erode owner trust and might be squeezed and so forth. And yeah, I don't know what you do with that. That was like a really interesting one. I don't know if it's any different from other like innovations. Like you probably have to pick a KPI for the like you probably start with the problem, not with the technology.
So
Like
let's go back. I guess I go back to like PlanGrid's launch in 2012, whenever it was. Uh, the innovation there was like, hey, normally you'd have these rolls and rolls of documents, the 42 inches in your job site trailer. And now I have it in the field. So I go in the field and I can like say, hey, this is what the drawing says, this is what's installed, as opposed to walking back and forth to job site trailer. So like that's actually time saving where you were like, hey, I would spend 3 hours going back and forth to job site trailer. Now it's instantaneously here. I have most updated documents, and then the change management on top of that, if addendum comes out and anything like that.
you build the
Literally, my
right
first job as like
drawings. Yeah.
my first job as a contractor, I was at a sub, and I literally like had to update the drawings. I would like red mark, or like use a red pen, fold over corners, and it was brutal. So like it's a massive step change, and like now you're saying in that example that Andrew just used, is that a massive step change?
Yeah.
Is the building going to be built better because the owner was like, hey, you put $1,000 in here for steel. Well, the market for steel right now is $98 or $980 or whatever that change is. Does that actually constitute a step change?
I don't know if it constitutes a step change for the building and how it gets built, but I feel like it constitutes a step change for the process of getting through pre-construction. Like there's to varying degrees throughout the industry, right? Money is made through an asymmetry of information, and as one of our like CAB members put it, like what if that goes away? What if
Right.
what if the owner shows up with full information about every cost detail? They know everything that any estimator could know walking in. That means like there's like you're forced into like a new level of transparency, right? It's not like, okay, I need to hide this contingency across. I don't know where it's going to hit, but like one of these 5 packages is going to need some contingency, so I got to spread it across all of them and then draw against it. Like that's going to be like harder to obscure. And so I don't know if it's a step change for output. I don't know that it's a good thing.
No, it's not a good
I don't know
thing.
that it's a good
I
thing
don't
for
think it's a good thing.
owners. I doubt that it's a good thing in the near term for general contractors. It might be a good thing long term for the industry because it'll like owners getting better educated is a good thing if the AI is right and is actually educating them. But it is like it's a step change for that process. I think it's not. I don't think that particular example is as big a deal as drawings on iPads. Like that was a really big deal.
Yeah, I when I see an owner, let's say, plugging something into ChatGPT to get a response in the context of reviewing a submittal or understanding the estimate, I can't see anything really good coming out of that. Let's say like that they do challenge them and they do get some kind of information from ChatGPT. I think as soon as they have the conversation, the estimator will just still have so much information, they're not going to really be able to do anything. I think surfacing more information is ultimately better for anyone, better for everyone. But maybe speaking of surfacing information, there was some chatter over the last 2 weeks about Palantir officially publishing their construction page. So let's pull up the LinkedIn announcement. Let's see what we think. So this is from Joe Pratois. So Joe, we talked about this, and I think Mike, you even shared a LinkedIn post with Palantir launching their construction page. I don't know if you noticed, but they took it down almost immediately and made some changes. But I mean, looking through their landing page, there is a lot of things that they're doing here. There's a lot of things. There's actually every step of the construction process they have a button for, which we can go into. Yeah, that's right. Spray and pray. So they launch their construction platform formally. I think anybody who's dealt with enterprise construction company knows that they've been selling into very large construction companies now for a handful of years. Some of our customers as well have been working with Palantir. What do we think? Is this a threat for every construction AI or technology company? Are they just going to demolish everyone? Or are they going to be fairly niche? What's the positioning here?
When I saw this, I thought, and I still believe this, that Palantir is the only large competitor in the space that actually has an AI agent that works at scale. a lot of the other big players. I think there's two sides to this market. There's like the incumbents, which I think Palantir just ran right into and said, "Hey, we're an incumbent now, and we have an AI agent that works." And then there's the startup world where they're agentic first. Um, I really think this gives them a massive competitive advantage um, for pain points that Autodesk and Procore have sold against each other on, where there might not be one central source of truth on a Procore project because the subcontractor has a different data source and the owner has a different data source. Palantir's ontology solves that, even if each one of those users use Procore, PlanGrid, or whatever tool. I know it's a premium, but to take this swing that like, hey, we're solving this data layer ontology position, um, I think it's the truest form of value prop in like large construction site right now, or in construction right now. And then their whole pitch of like, we actually are the only ones that have an agent that works at scale is hugely valuable. And the companies that can pay the premium that they charge will be able to benefit from it. And you see that in the stock market where, I mean, they're, don't have to go into the stats world, but they're like rule of 40 is like rule of 94 right now, which is insane.
Maybe we can clarify what ontology means for the team, because it is thrown around
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah. So ontology in Palantir's world is the glue that connects all the nodes together in the most simplistic way. So it takes data, it takes reporting, it takes physical pieces in the world and makes everything into a common language that can be structured or extracted and structured across all the different tools. So what that means is like, hey, let's say I have a caterpillar backhoe on my job site that has data that's getting pulled out through CAT's AI layer. Palantir would take that data, structure it down into their ontology layer, and have one central source of truth for that Caterpillar system. Would do that with Procore, would do that with Autodesk, would do that with every data source. One really, really interesting model that I saw, a large engineering firm, Jacobs, is a Palantir customer, and they presented at Palantir's AIP event a couple years ago. And Palantir built them a dashboard that connected all of the wastewater treatment plants in this city, or in the city of Wisconsin, in a city in Wisconsin. So it took every single report, every single software that wastewater treatment plant across the 75 that they had, and was able to actually facilitate a optimization plan for the customer to say, hey, when it rains over 3 inches, you need to turn on these 7 wastewater treatment plants, because they're able to normalize all the data.
That's crazy.
So again, that's an engineering example, but you can start seeing this on construction if there is this overall dashboard that the owner is executing on, and there's agentic layers to start flagging issues automatically in a process. Like we just talked about this issue of like people are using ChatGPT to try to like create comments or updates on documents. Like the agentic layer in Palantir would be structured by the owner to follow rules. So when you ask it a question, it would be structured, forward deployed, engineered, customized for that specific use case to give the best answer possible.
I do.
ERP, right? Like we have a digital record for like everything out in the universe, and we're able to understand it. And there's other applications and sensors that feed it in, and we're able to analyze and improve it, right? And I wonder if this actually points to the big opportunity for them, because when construction says ERP, the thing that they mean is what almost anyone else, I believe, would call an accounting system. And that the ERP that actually models the production work like is typically project management software, and is typically at arm's length, and is like poorly integrated across projects and so forth. And so it's like Palantir's opportunity is to realize the opportunity, like true ERP inside of construction, because they can stitch together all of these different data sources and all these different stakeholders, like as a given contractor needs. Is that?
Yeah, I think they're counter positioning against, let's say, incumbents like Procore and Autodesk is, don't worry about integrations, don't worry about multiple platforms. We will just take all your underlying data across wherever it's stored, be it Procore or Google Drive or Box or a locally hosted server, and we are just going to build the workflows on top, so you don't have to worry about it. I think where incumbents may have problems here is there are a lot of interfaces between what you would like an ERP, a traditional ERP, and Procore and Autodesk, and those things don't necessarily work or talk to each other. So maybe you have to go hire a third party like Agave. Okay, and then Agave is going to stitch together the piping, and maybe Palantir is saying the data is the data. We understand what is an invoice versus an estimate versus a specification, and I'm going to assign this taxonomy to all your documents all associated with a project, and then I can just build workflows on top irrespective of where that data sits. Maybe that's their positioning. And no, sorry, my only point I was going to make here is like if you look at their website, they're doing nearly every single workflow here: estimating, procurement, labor, equipment, subcontractors, PM, product and execution, back office. I think you're right on the ERP. It does look like a lot of quantification. There's obviously some invoicing and billing integrations here. But like I don't know if it's as big of a threat as we think, only because I've talked to people who've implemented Palantir. What they'll do is they pay them a good amount of money. They come on site. They have a forward deployed engineer dedicated for some amount of time, and their basic job is to find use cases, right? So they'll sell Foundry, which is their platform, and this ontology. Then they're going to say, we've done this for other customers. So we've done this for customer X, customer Y, customer Z. We'll come in and we'll find some solutions. But given the cost of what I'm hearing, these forward deploy engineers actually cost a construction company, it probably skews towards the very large ones. Okay, and there's no self-serve here. Not to say that would prohibit people, but you probably need to go speak to a salesperson and spend a couple $1 million a year. So you're really talking about Bechtel, PCL, WebCore, the big ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Palantir is an AI company, then I believe Palantir is the most scaled AI vendor in construction technology, probably by a factor of 10.
In terms of customers,
revenue.
in terms of revenue.
Based on those numbers. 55% of Palantir's revenue comes from public sector contracts, like taking government money. And I just wonder if it would be different dealing with typically employee-owned contractors where you're not necessarily spending someone else's money on a really expensive implementation. I have one more nitpick. Scroll up to the graphics. This is like an insanely up, further, nope, down. Yeah, look at those. Okay, so that graphic with that like building, that's the RAC advanced sample model right there. Yeah. That's the advanced sample model for Revit. And having hung out in the BIM world for a while, for like 10 years, my rule of thumb has been if like a product demo or a screenshot has like the BIM model, then it's not fucking real. Like that's just not a real BIM model. And anybody who's like saying that they're pulling data out of that or doing anything interesting with it, like that was a model that someone built in an afternoon, probably literally 20 years ago. Like it's not at all representative of like the amount of data or like the quality of data that actual models would have, and so that's like I think that's a smell there.
Yeah, I just think the interesting piece, right? Like you create it creates this Foundry instance where you're like tracking supply chain assets, like risk across your portfolio, and then they do these things what's called like orchestrations. So in that example, I know this is a demo, but like it would just show whatever you would see in your Autodesk instance. As an example, like if you have a BIM 360 viewer or a Forma viewer, like it would render that here. And what I think is interesting is like, how we have all the data here. Can we orchestrate specific workflows that do replace PM tools in the application? So if Procore's main 3 workflows are, RFIs, change order, and submittal tracking, can an agentic agent, an AI agent, do that better at scale using the building blocks that are set up here? And I think that's interesting because this bet would be like, hey, all right, it does it at a large public project for $1 billion. And then what Palantir does is they do this, like we have tried to follow the same thesis of like gravel road to highway. So if like a PCL or Bechtel creates a submittal workflow through Palantir's ontology layer, and then that's valuable, they harden it into the application, and then anybody can use the submittal workflow. And I think that's interesting. If you're taking the bet on, hey, this is an agentic workflow that actually works. So like stepping into those pieces, like, is it a better agentic workflow than what Procore Autodesk could do? If that is a yes, I think they have a really good opportunity to take a lot of market share.
Okay, let me take the other side of this. I mean, based on what you're describing, I don't know how this works at scale. The benefit that Procore and Autodesk have is that they have so much institutional momentum within companies who use them. Retraining is so hard. And I think we're really underestimating the momentum that these companies have within the staff, right? If staff have familiarity with a tool and they know the submittal module, I can't see how Palantir takes that data, gives you an agent, and now it's just way easier. I think if anything, Autodesk Procore have the advantage because they know how their customers interact with these tools. They understand, they probably have more empathy with these customers and can now say, well, we know you've been going from this pixel to this pixel. I'm going to intercept that, and here's an agent. So I think what Palantir has going for it, it has a fantastic name. It has a ripping hot stock. And I think CIOs at large companies are saying, this is one of the best AI companies in the world. We should go work with them.
One pushback I'll have on that is, what if we're trending towards a world where the UI doesn't matter and everything's in your email? So it doesn't matter how your employee is trained. So your employee would get an email of the tasks that need to be done, can all be engaged via text or via email. So it doesn't matter how they're trained on a UI of a historical software. So it doesn't matter that, hey, I like the workflow in Autodesk or Procore for a submittal review. We're going to swing the pendulum back. If you look 10 years ago, everyone was using Excel and email, and they say, hey, we need a SaaS tool to manage this workflow better. And now the pendulum is going to swing back where I'm going to go back to my email and Excel sheet because these agents will live on top of that and meet me exactly where I am.
Well, I can't disagree with that because I also believe in that world. I also believe that a lot of work will still be done in email and text message. I think that's going to happen a lot more now with agents than before. But yeah, tell us.
Yeah, I'll take the other side of that one. I don't know, the like deploying a SaaS product, like when you deploy it to manage the workflow, like one of the things that you're pushing inside an organization is consistency. That like it will work the same way because it's not actually like it will work the same way across the organization. You'll be able to understand it like in the center, and maybe people can do whatever they want, and magic can like translate between that and a centralized model of like what's going on, and maybe that gives you that central look. Then the other thing is like helping teams work together and then helping external stakeholders have like predictability in how they interact, right? That I can move people between teams because the tool enforces a consistent process like that we like and that is good enough for us. They can pick it up and run with it. And it's like, okay, I'm on a new project, like this project director or whatever likes emojis in their emails, and now I gotta break out the special keyboard on my iPhone anytime I want to do a submittal. Like it, that's a terrible example, but that consistency is like another benefit that comes from these structured tools. Like, and I think the other trick is like just the presentation of information. Like, some stuff is great in email, but like software would have been delivered just through text if it was easier to understand information exclusively. Like when we need to understand things, there's all sorts of different representations that have for it that hide certain information and highlight certain things, and that's like there's value in that interface to the human, and so I don't know if that goes away. Like if you're trying to peruse 100 RFIs.
Maybe you don't get complete determinism. Okay, so maybe these new software applications aren't deterministic. They're not going to do the same thing every time. But I'll say this. When you hire a human, you're also not getting deterministic output. And the way I like to think, at least the way I'm trying to change my mind a little bit, but when I think, okay, we have this body of work we need done, let's go plug in a human. Right, let's go hire a head of customer success, or let's go hire this person. And I think construction companies think this way too. And then they'll spend the 120, maybe 150,000 fully burdened cost. But I think what people are going to start thinking, and they are going to be given this opportunity, they're going to be given these options. Hey, spend 20 to 30,000, and you'll get, let's call it a limited amount of workflows it won't be deterministic, but you can one for one replace a component of that labor. I think people are going to be thinking that way. I know, for example, like Mike with OpenClaw, you're thinking of that to a degree, right? And I think
mean,
that will diffuse itself into construction.
I think Provision's launch a new pricing model starting tomorrow. I love it.
Paving skulls.
Yeah, that's right.
So again, just one last it's more of this like, hey, I'm in the field with my cell phone. Instead of trying to sign into an app that it was designed in 2010, I take a picture, I text a number, and it structures the data down wherever it needs to go in the background. I think there's super value in that. That is like not that could only be done with a tool that is like agentic first. It's like, for example, we use Ramp as a business card expense company. Like, we just went on offsite. I had 18 people in Las Vegas for 5 days. None of them signed into Ramp to manage their expenses. So what does that look like in construction? Maybe they're managing their workflow via text or whatever. They never sign into the PM tool. And then there's me as the admin of Ramp that has to go through and approve everything. And I'm approving these orchestrations. And it allows this agent to take a first pass, provide guidance to the user, make the right selection, and then there's really just one person that's doing the final approval on that. So maybe only the PX is signing into the PM tool at the end of the day.
I can buy that. I can buy that future.
Data that way. Those like reducing double entry. Like that's always a win.
Let's go into our next topic. So obviously this week, maybe it was last week, you guys have read the Citrini post. I'm sure Mike has. Andrew, you've seen it too. So I think what was really interesting about that, there was a lot of things that were interesting about it, right? It was this doomer scenario where GDP goes up, but people are losing employment. Mike is going to talk about Block's layoffs, and Andrew will comment on that as well. But what was another interesting part of it is Citadel, which is a quantitative hedge fund. They published a response talking about maybe taking the opposite side of that bet, which is as software becomes easier to automate, there will be an increased need in software engineers. So this blue line here at the bottom, this light blue line, which is showing an increase up and to the right, this is open jobs for software engineers relative to January 2024, which is at 100%. We can see it nearing the 100% mark here. The dashed blue line below is overall jobs on public forums like Indeed and Monster and things like that. But I was wondering what these lines would look like for construction roles, and these are the three lines you're seeing above for site supers, project managers, and estimators. So I think one thing you can pull from this is like, irrespective of what's happening in software and AI, people need constructors. And these roles are still really hard to fill. But where do you both sit on this debate, right? Does software engineering go to, like what we see with Block is that maybe they don't need as many people and they will lay them off? And others are saying, yeah, actually we need more software engineers. What do you all think? And how do you think it relates to construction in the built world?
So just to tie to the Block post, Jack Dorsey let go 40% of the workforce yesterday.
Yeah, 4,000 out of 10,000.
4,000 out of 10,000. I think the initial response to that was like, oh, they used AI to replace that. But as Andrew was texting me last night about, it's actually like they aren't that efficient of a company. So I talked to a couple people I know that have worked at Block or work at Block, and it seems the majority of the layoffs were people that were remote, and it was almost a forcing mechanism to get people back into office. So I think there's a lot of like
all sorts of financial statements. I was prepped. I was ready to go to the mat with you on this one, and I don't have to.
And the splash, again, it's a good headline. But internally at our company, I will hire as many software engineers as I can hire. I think for commercial construction, they will hire as many people as they can hire because it just helps them scale their business. Anything that is asymmetry information, will continue to hire as effectively and as quickly as possible. And I do not see the construction world trusting the answer on a chat GPT interface more than someone in the field that's saying, hey, the steel pipe needs to go here, for a very long time. And I think with that, it's just going to scale. We're going to have to build more infrastructure, going to have to continue to grow. We still have to redo our entire power infrastructure. I think this gives us an opportunity to shift how we build internally at the country, where maybe you can't be a consultant for a B2B marketing company anymore. Maybe you actually have to get your hands dirty, and there's a shift in job openings in the country.
Yeah, go become an electrician and you see how much money you make right now.
Yeah. Here, let me just share the screen. Yeah, Block was interesting. So,
You actually have. Wow, these are legit financials.
It like smelled of bullshit. The smell of bullshit was that we pressure tested like the organization from several different ways. We're cutting 4,000 people, and we've pressure tested and deeply analyzed the specific roles that we will need and won't need in this brave new world. It's like, no, there's no way that happened. There's not enough time for that to have happened. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm not going to claim to be an expert in Block's financials. They really focus on gross profit. They say it's because it washes out, like they make a little bit of money on Bitcoin trading, which has a very high cost of goods, like 98% COGS, only 2% margin or something. And they say it's because of that, but they also include in those COGS, like sort of above the gross profit line in this cost of revenue, all the credit card interchange fees, which if you are a payment processor, definitely seem like they're important to like understand the health of the business. And yeah, if you look at gross profit reported this way, like, yeah, that is growing very nicely. Either way, overall, it's like a healthy company that's throwing off cash. But top line is like barely growing, like 6% for the last 5 years. The margins, the operating income is a margin of that. Operating income is a margin of gross profit. Like, yes, they are rule of 40. If you look at it on a revenue basis, they are most definitely not. And so I think this is a cost-saving measure. I don't think this has anything to do with AI except a convenient fig leaf to make Jack still seem cool. So, yeah,
maybe
bullshit.
They went on to Lenny's. If you guys know Lenny Rosinski, he was a PM at Airbnb. I think it was either their CPO or CTO. A few days before they launched this, they sent this news. They were talking about this internal AI agent called Goose, which is apparently automated something like 80 to 90% of their PRs. I doubt it. I mean, it's probably operating in the background and fixing bugs. I don't think it's going to be. It's probably not a full software engineer, but I would imagine like Ramp has done something similar to this too. Yeah. Right? They're still operating in the background. There's a bug. Maybe it's a Sentry alert. What it will do is it'll triage the issue, spin up a PR, pass the test, reissue the PR, and then it'll merge to main. And I can see that, but I don't know. I don't see how this is actually. They're not even an AI company, right? Like they're a financial company.
And then just the spin to the construction world on that is like a PM's job isn't sitting at a computer writing code day after day. A PM's job is to be in the field where like obviously there's workflows they have to do, like approve submittal or like, approve change orders, get submittals reviewed to engineers of record. I think a lot of those things can be automated, but this like boots on the ground is not being replaced until there's robots with boots on the ground. And in order to have robot boots on the ground, you have to have a real world model of construction that actually makes sense, which ties to just a little sidebar, but like the last Autodesk investment that they just made a $200 million investment in a real world construction not large language model, but I guess first visual language model.
Fifi.
Yeah, there's a lot of steps that have to get to that point before you're like having a robot screw into the wall. So that's why my position is that there will be continually higher in construction. The macro environment is we got to read specifically in the United States and Canada. A lot of infrastructure needs to be updated. Two is AI is not replacing these jobs anytime soon. It will help with back office pieces.
Back office, yes. I mean, I was that same general contractor whose office I was at yesterday. they had 2 project coordinator positions open. I was in their office showcasing some new agentic workflows, and he literally said, "I'm only going to hire 1 going forward.
Yep.
I just don't need a second one."
Right.
So I think I don't believe that it won't impact hiring. I think it will give people more leverage. It will give teams more leverage. I do think it's going to hurt maybe early stage job roles, like maybe project coordinators and junior estimators. Like I just like I've seen it, so like it's probably going to happen again.
If you're the exec that's built 10 NFL stadiums across the country, your job is very, very safe. Same on the data center side. It's that dichotomy of like people coming out of college, but then contractors are going to have to take risk in order to build that pipeline up, because that exec that's running a data center or running a hospital or a stadium is going to retire in 5 years, and now you're sitting there sitting on your hands as a contractor, being like, all right, I'm going to actually make this investment into a project coordinator, into a field engineer, with the expectation that grows into that senior role, so that in 10 years I have pipeline.
Yeah, I do agree with you. Okay, next topic. What do you guys want to talk about?
You want to talk about GMP? My favorite
Let's talk about
topic.
GMP.
Do it.
Andrew, take it from there. Do we have a LinkedIn post to go with this?
We have a LinkedIn post, but I have a slide deck.
Ooh, let's see it.
All right, here we go. There's this like analysis that this guy Stan Shi did. He's the president and CEO of Acer or something like that, in 80s or 90s, and he was looking at like electronics manufacturing, and his analysis was that between the 1970s and the 2000s, the market globalized, and the assembly step of like taking together all these components that have been manufactured by Intel and your memory manufacturer and all the other components, and like turning them into a product that you then shipped out and that someone else then sold, had become much more competitive, because there were very few like competitive barriers to entering that. Like you need a big room and people with hands to put these things together. And what it meant was that the value across the value chain that went from raw materials through to the customer was shifting. That the value was being concentrated away from where they were, and was being concentrated in the design of these products, where you could have like defensible IP that you control that could not be replicated as easily by someone else. And then in the distribution side, where you understand the customer and you're closest to their needs, and you solve the last mile problem. And yeah, Stan Shi gave this presentation, led Acer. They built this amazing company. They're still going today. And ever since then, people who have been to business school, or people who have talked to other people who have been to business school but have not been to business school like myself, have been using it to explain other things. And so it's really easy to make this and put 3 things in a row and say that the one in the middle is getting screwed. But I think there's something to be said for this in construction, in that call it construction management, actually. Construction management is like the easiest to replicate part. Like you need some number of people in a trailer and a clipboard, and you have yourself a general contractor. It's much easier to do that, and you can see that in the rates at which RFPs and bidding opportunities are responded to, right? Like it's common to get, from what we hear, 10 to 15 general contractor responses, but each of those general contractors will really struggle to get 3 qualified trades for many of the key scopes. Like you can go anywhere in the country and be a general contractor. You might not be competitive, but it's much easier to enter this step. And this is compared and contrasted to 2 other things, like the development side, where you might go full life cycle on the asset and actually market it out to the end user and take on the market risk in addition to the construction risk. And then the production side. And I feel like this is where the super subs and the GCs adding self-perform capabilities are going, where those are labor is a lot harder to mobilize. You have durable investments in equipment. You have barriers to entry that allow you to charge more of a premium, and you're able to do it in part of the value chain where much more value is being accrued as the CM piece continues to get more and more competitive. And so the case the CM fee is going to zero, I think, is that like this is happening and it's just going to crush the CM fee.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with this, especially when general contractors who are bidding on these public procurement websites, they know it themselves that it's a race to the bottom and it's a price shootout and nothing else matters. And you hope that you make money on change orders, which doesn't really set the tone for like a good long lasting relationship. I think we said this last time too. If you're a general contractor, you should go develop some relationships with owners that haven't released their work yet, and really invest in those relationships and invest in subcontractor relationships, because otherwise there's literally no barrier to entry for new entrants here. Mike, what do you think?
On my side, I agree. Like it's hard again if you're sitting in the seat of a general contractor that is seeing this happen slowly as the bids come in, where you're not as competitive in the space, or that fee is decreasing. Where the lenses that you can become more efficient in, where the lenses you can make more money in. It seems like the writing's on the wall from my perspective. I've had a couple of conversations with some top 40 and our CEOs that are like, how do we do this at scale? And the CEOs that take the stronger position for this change are going to be the ones that are most successful on that back end coming out. Like ACS Grupo just released their earnings, which is Turner, the company that owns Turner. Green shoots everywhere, flying colors. They're leaning heavily into additional services offered. Limbach, the mechanical subcontractor that's becoming the super sub that we talked about last week. Green. Comfort Systems, MCore, green. They're riding the wave of the data centers. But how do they continue to capture that market? Where you're not just a person with a clipboard on a job site, you're direct value delivered to the owner. Because I think those people can charge a premium as well. One connection that I've made, one like node connection I made in my head was, I know we brought up Harvey a couple times. Law firms that use Harvey might be able to charge more for the services they provide. Like let's say a due diligence process normally takes 3 months. With Harvey, they can do it in 3 weeks. If it was 3 months, cost them $1 million, would the customer be willing to pay 3 times as much for a third of the time? And how does that relate to construction? If you're going to an owner and saying, we can commit to opening this building up 6 months earlier, as opposed to your 18-month time frame. I know normally in that 18-month time frame, I'm going to charge you $1 million in fee, but do it in 6 months, I'm going to charge you a $10 million fee. And how does that play out in the space?
The ability to deliver on that and offer that in the market has to not be replicable by every other general contractor in your market.
But that's like, hey, like we have this relationship with the switchgear manufacturer in South Korea, so that I know I get the switchgear here tomorrow. It's the I have a offsite modular construction plant that's spinning that is just producing widgets one after another, and I can jump into those and take those slots out. It's everything outside of what happens on a job site, and then you're just meshing pieces together on a job site.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not that extreme of this like 10x return, but it's like, what does that mean?
But Harvey enables lawyers to do work faster.
Yeah.
But they're charging on an hourly basis. They're not usually taking fixed fee work.
For now.
What do you think changes?
That I think in the legal market, more lawyers charge almost not consulting fees. I actually brought this up to our external lawyer, and I was like, I would rather pay you $120,000 a year. You have 10 clients like me.
What's going on?
As an example, and that I'm paying him for his expertise, not for him to review NDAs. So in that,
so you want a fixed fee contract for?
I think it's fixed. It's fixed fee, but it's also, I think it's like, I don't know. It gets more into this like consulting advisor role of law firms on that side in the business transaction world. and then that firm can theoretically charge whatever they want to charge, not bill by the hour.
I'm personally a little bit bearish. I mean, I use Claude Legal plugin. It's good at reviewing MSAs. We have our playbook. We have our playbook. We use that when we're reviewing MSAs as well. Previously, that was going to our lawyer. I don't think we should be paying for that. It's like a very standard review process. And there's a component of the revenue that was based on these small kind of repeatable tasks. I don't know if they're going to charge more now for the heavy lifting, but it's getting eroded. I just don't know how the market gets bigger, because it's not like software engineering, right? It's not creation. It's usually prevention and mitigation, a response to some externality.
Would more M&As happen if it didn't take as long?
Generating those externalities gets easier too. Can Claude Legal write demand letters?
I don't know. We haven't tested it.
So I think like no lawyer goes in to become a lawyer at a big firm to like review MSAs. So there's a tool in Harvey called Workflow. That law firm could give you their access to their approved workflow that says, hey, if you drag and drop an MSA in here, it's going to give me my approved law firm notes. That risk is shifted then from you at provision to the law firm. They're not charging you for it. And then what happens is like it opens up space for those legal entities to do the things where they actually make money on. Like in the PE world, it's like, oh, we're going to open another fund, or we're going to do due diligence and do M&A transaction, and I got to go review 1 million documents. I don't see a world where you're doing an M&A due diligence process in Claude Law, because there's no one to point a finger at.
I completely agree. I completely agree with M&A transaction and diligence.
If that opens up more capacity where it creates more liquidity in that market, like what's the downstream effects of that? There's obviously the double-edged sword of that. Now everyone sues everybody because it's just robots talking to each other. But it helps with a point the finger back to, I can't sue Claude, but this law firm, take the top 20, is the one that said this is the right way to think about it.
Totally. Yeah. I think everyone knows that part of what lawyers offer is, some liability in case things go wrong. That's part of the value proposition, and I don't see AI tools doing that. So I can't disagree with you. My only point is that some of the value is being chipped away by these tools. And so
they got to get creative. I think they get creative, and they have to offer better services or outcomes, whatever that is.
Okay, I know we're running short on time here. Let's talk about the next topic here. Let's talk about API access from incumbents. Let me kick it off to one of you. Let me share my screen. Okay, Sarah from Trunk Tools posted a day ago about revoking API access. So it's no secret. It seems like Procore cut them off of API from their API access, either directly or through Agave, or however they make it work. And they're now integrated with Autodesk. It sounds like a little bit more deeply within their marketplace. Obviously, when you build on top of incumbents' data, there's always that risk, especially even if you are going to be competitive with them, or if you're signaling that you're going to be competitive with them. Is Procore within their rights to do this? I think ostensibly it was, API access was revoked over model training. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Sarah ever came on the record and said why, but are they within their rights? Is this foul play? What do we think about this?
I think they're within their rights, but I don't know that it's smart. And if I were a customer of Procore's, I would look at remote, unless I was the one who would recognize the problem, and I don't know what the problem was. I don't know if there was a problem. Maybe it was incredibly heinous. Maybe it wasn't. But Procore does have a competing offering that they loudly announced the same week that they cut off access, sort of interestingly.
Are you referring to Helix?
Yeah, right?
Helix.
I'm not.
I don't even know. I don't know if they're pushing Helix anymore, but yeah, I think that was around the same time. They had Procore Groundbreak, they announced Helix, and they cut off access.
So if I'm a customer of Procore's, I have my data, it's in Procore, I have other tools I want to use with that, and Procore is going to pull the rug underneath that. Also, how is this ecosystem going to expand? Because what future company is going to build on top of Procore's APIs, if they could get turned off at a moment's notice? So I think they're well within their right. I assume they're well within their right, but if I were a customer, I would be really unhappy, like, with that sort of behavior. Like, the customer should be in charge of, like, who gets access to their data via the API.
Well, if you're the CIO of a general contractor and you've been told, hey, this third party allegedly has been violating our terms of service and maybe your data is at risk, where do you place that relative to the value you're getting from this tool, given that Procore says, actually, you can use my tool?
Yeah, that's great. The trick is the CIO gets to make that decision, right? Like, they presumably opted in at some point and have some terms of service, and they read them with whoever the vendor is that's accessing the data via the API. Like, and if you're the CEO at an ENR top 20 contractor and you got an AI tool and you didn't read the terms of service to see whether or not your data could be trained on, like, what are you doing? And so it's not like, I agree that Trunk Tools could use this, or I agree that another vendor could use it. Sure, you brought me some information that maybe they're violating it, but I should already have the controls to be able to turn that access off myself. Like, I should be able to control that as the customer. It shouldn't be the platform that controls that.
I do agree with you. I do agree. I do think it's heavy-handed, and it looks pretty clear that they have a competing solution, and they don't necessarily want to allow a third-party startup to grow within their space. I mean, we see it before. I mean, this happens with other incumbents. This happens with Service Titan. This has happened with HubSpot. Maybe not HubSpot, but Salesforce has done this as well. Service Titan has done this.
Flagged it, right?
Yeah.
You'll get your,
I ran a prompt. I was trying to figure this out. It's like, what's the actual example? So like the real world examples in mobile are like Android is completely open and iOS is closed. So you have to live in the ecosystem of Procore or live in the ecosystem of iOS. The PC world, Windows went super open, Mac went super closed. Salesforce, we just talked about the App Exchange. Like they're cutting off access to Slack's API for customers on like for clean competing service. It's messy, man. Because you also don't know, did any of these companies boldly break the T's and C's that they signed by using the API, and that was the reason it was flagged as turned off. Right, it's very much a marketing. You can position this in a lot of different ways.
yeah, calling out the closed garden approach, the list of Apple thing. You know, it's an iPhone.
Yeah. Right.
There are arguments to be made for the walled garden, but I don't know. For a consumer, that's one thing. For like a big enterprise.
So I think just as I do one challenge, and this is not Trunk Tool exclusive, just holistically. I have data in Procore, and that's my source of truth. I am a Procore customer that only lives in Procore. Now, another Procore customer uses this API to train a model. I guess it doesn't like logic, but like that all that information that was in that Procore instance that I've shared with, like, I don't know, it gets very fuzzy. If I'm in a JV, for example, with a GC that both use Procore, one is a Trunk Tools customer, one is not. And they use that JV information to train a model for Trunk Tools to give my proprietary secrets away, or whatever the position is that net positive for the industry or net negative for the industry? And as the GC that didn't have the agreement with the LLM training run, I don't know. It's very messy, and I don't have a good answer to that.
I think it's not negative. I mean, the customer, to Andrew's point, I do agree. The customer should decide. It's their data. They should be able to decide whether or not they want to cut off access from this third party because of any, purported data use violations. But ultimately, if they're the ones who are experiencing the value, I mean, they're in a bit of a tough spot. If they cut off access and the users at these companies were real fans, they've just lost some brand equity. And now they're going to substitute and say, use DataGrid or use Helix. But they're going to have some clear egg on their face. And it does.
Go ahead, sorry.
The last point I was going to make is like what's clear in this industry is every project is an opportunity to take somebody's lunch. Yeah. So on the next project, Autodesk may then say, hey, we supply Trunk Tools. If you really liked it, here's a chance to migrate. Try it on one project. Maybe we'll bundle it. Maybe they'll have an agreement or some kind of partnership.
One last note I just want to make, because I just had this conversation with our lawyer, is like who actually data ownership is a funny world in construction. Like the things you have in Procore, is that actually owned by the general contractor? the construction documents are theoretically owned by the owner, the person that contractually created the project. Same with the specifications.
By the architect.
It's usually only the owner. The owner pays an architect to make them. It's the ownership should be in the owner's.
I'm way out of my depth. You guys should do this. But like,
They usually have IP ownership assignments.
renovation, the architect retained copyright on the drawings, and their point was they wanted to lock in construction administration. They said, yeah, you can build this, but like, I own it, and I'm licensing it to you for the purpose of doing this renovation. Like, and anything beyond
Right.
that, you have to work with me on.
But how messy does that make that then? All right, I'm a general contractor. I've uploaded these documents to into Procore, and then a random software has come in and says, "Hey, I'm pinging. It's pulling down these documents. I'm going to create a model on the documents that I've uploaded, where there's 3 levels removed from the initial copyright of the architect." It's probably a different conversation, but I was just like, my mind was blown by that, and I was like, I have no idea.
I don't know,
Okay.
and that seems like a good note to end it on.
I was going to say, let's cut off there. We're a little bit over the hour. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll talk to you again next week.